we'll do a review in Likutei Sichos in Chelek Teves, volume 15. This is the Sicha for Asar B'Teves. It also connects to the Parsha of Vayigash. As the Rebbe says in the note over here in the Sicha, it says Rumozu b'Parshas Vayigash. This is a very lengthy, detailed Sicha explaining the different parts. The Rambam writes that the Yom Tov will be turned around for festival. The Rebbe details there is 3 different levels, and there is different psukim brought down in the Rambam, and as also brought down in the Shulchan Aruch. The Rebbe will make distinction between them. Also, the Rebbe will explain there's 3 levels of teshuvah. A lot of different things tying in with all what Asar B'Teves, and also the Rebbe discusses the fact that Asar B'Teves is the only fast that would be fasted on Shabbos if it did come out on Shabbos, as discussed in the Sicha, but we'll go step by step. Again, it's a lengthy Sicha with a lot of details, and we'll do it one step at a time, Be'ezras Hashem. Asar B'Teves. Aleph. Asar B'Teves is Chal Alamol B'Smichas to Shabbos Parshas Vayigash. The 10th of Teves always comes out close to the Shabbos in which we read the portion of Vayigash. So the Rebbe wants to say that there needs to be a connection in the portion of Vayigash to the idea of a Asar B'Teves, because this follows the idea that the Rebbe brings down from the Shalom. The Shalom says, as the tiniest will be bald, as the tiniest, the Shalom says that the fast days, bekulom yesh shayches la'oison haparshiyes shecholois bahem. All of the fast days have a connection to those portions in which they come out. So b'meila is move on as the tzoim for Asar B'Teves, that the fast day of Asar B'Teves hota shayches to Parshas Vayigash. That the fast of the 10th of Teves has a connection because it always comes near the Parshas Vayigash. So there's a connection, the Parshas Vayigash, that everyone wants to find between the fast of Asar B'Teves and the Parshas Vayigash. But the Rebbe says more than that. The Rebbe points out that the fast of Asar B'Teves is not just one of 4 fasts, but rather this is the beginning of all the fast days. This is the most important because this is the beginning of all the problems that happened. So we're not just going to find in the Parshas Vayigash a connection to the specific fast day of Asar B'Teves, in which the king of Babel, Melech Babel, he surrounded the city of Yerushalayim, the beginning of the problems, but we're going to include the general destruction of the Beis Hamikdash and the fast day and the tshuva we do in order to fix it, as it's hinted in the Parshas Vayigash. Yesh loymar, we can say, the Rebbe says, as vibald as Asar B'Teves is the rishon, since the 10th of Teves is the first of the 4 fasts. The first meaning the shoyrish, it's the root. For alle dalet tzeimes, from all the 4 fast days, kid lakamon sif tezayin, as the Rebbe will bring on a sif tezayin. That's why the only fast day that had it come out on Shabbos, and there's also a possibility coming out on Shabbos, you would fast, is Asar B'Teves, unlike Tisha B'Av or Shivasar B'Tammuz. If they fall on Shabbos, they get nitcha. The Shabbos overrides them. The only fast is the Torah fast of Yom Kippur. But Asar B'Teves, we would have fasted. And the reason is because it's the root of all the other tzeimes. That makes it more severe, as the Rebbe will explain later on in Siftei Zayin. So because we're talking Asar B'Teves comes out in the Parshas Vayigash, is the Shaykhis Solution, Parshas Vayigash and Asora B'Teves. So the connection between the portion of Vayigash and Asora B'Teves, nit nor mitzad dem protis dikun inyan fun tzoyim ha'asiri. It's not just because that specific idea, which is the 10th of Teves, nor oich mitzad dem inyan hakloli from the Dalet Tzoyim, but also because of the general theme, the general idea of the 4 fasts that is hinted, that is connected to Asora B'Teves. Unhayois as der mekuvan v'tachlis from the Dalet Tzoyim of the Inyone HaChurban. So what is the purpose and what's the goal? So we want to connect it to the fasting, but the fasting is not the goal. It's a sort of Teves, but it's not the fasting is the goal over here. And the goal of all the fasting and in which we fast because of the destruction of the Inyone HaChurban, that is because of the aspects of the destruction that took place. Is birday. So why do we fast? Is birday as zozayin der binyan beis hamikdash chulen, so that there should ultimately be the building. We're fasting so that Shem will rebuild us the beis hamikdash. There should be the built binyan of beis hamikdash. Und die Tzoymes sollen bottle werden, and that these fasts should be nullified, no longer. And Yom Tovim. So first they should be nullified, and then they will be turned into Yom Tovs. So the Rebbe therefore wants to say that the connection to Vayigash Kemen Zogen. So therefore we can say as the Shaykhis to Parshas Vayigash, and that the connection between the section of Vayigash and the Dalet Tzoyim and the 4 fasts is not so much in the fast, but rather in the intent of the Binyan Beis Hamikdash. In there is beikir in the mekuvan is mainly in the intent from the tzoymes of the fast days. The tzoymes werden sein la'asid love, as the fast day will be in the future. So the Rebbe is saying here, as we're connecting fast days to the Parshas Vayigash, we're not connecting it just to the actual fast day. We're connecting it to the purpose of the fast day. What we want to connect to the Parshas Vayigash is the goal of the fast day, to build the Beis Hamikdash. And that we find in the Parsha. We can find in the Parsha as far as the building of the Beis Hamikdash, as the Rebbe will say that the beginning of the Parshas Vayigash is bringing Yosef and Yehuda together, which during the time of the Churban, there was a separation. There was Malchus Yehuda, and then there was the government of Yosef. Vayigash Elov Yehuda means Yehuda becoming and united with Yosef, as we also read in the Parsha. Let's look inside. Base. Der Teuchem von Parshas Vayigash, the content, the theme of the section of Vayigash is ongedaited, is pointed out. Every Sedra, how do you know what is the point, the theme of the Sedra? In Irnomen, it's pointed in its name. When you look at the name, we call it Vayigash. What does Vayigash mean? It came close. We're talking about the Hagosha from Yehuda to Yosef. We're talking about Yehuda coming close to Yosef. Because this is the theme of the Parsha, that's why we see the Haftorahs also, in which the Navi says to bring together Yehuda and Yosef. Was their far is the Haftorah from their Sedra. Therefore, the Haftorah of this portion of Vayigash, and we all know that was Haftorah Zaynim in Yonah Parsha. We do the Maftir part of the subject of the theme of the Parsha. So since this is also the Haftorah, that means this is actually the theme of the Parsha. So what does the Haftorah talk about? That's about the union, the getting together of Yehuda and Yosef in the future to come, when there will be no longer a split between two kingdoms. The Jewish people will be united all under the kingdom of David. As they veren la'achodim, they will become one. This is similar to the idea Yehuda coming to Yosef. The union similar to this is the Haftarah talking about when the Jewish people will be united together. And the Rebbe points out, still, while we bring Yehuda and Yosef together, as it says in the Parsha, in the Haftarah, still the one who remains on the top is David. Another point as it relates to the coming close and the union from Yehuda and Yosef was gebracht in der Haftarah, which is brought out in this Haftarah. Hagam, even though Yehuda and Yosef even though they will be as one united, kinal, as we said before, von deswegen wird Yehuda haben a Meile of Yosef. Yehuda will still nevertheless have an advantage over Yosef. Was their far is Davke v'David Abdi Nosi Lahem Loilam. It is specifically my servant David, Hashem says, is going to be the prince, the leader for them for eternity. So they're together, Yehuda and Yosef together. But the point here is that Yehuda remains the leader. So that's another point which comes out from the Haftarah. And that also is associated with the idea of the fast and the turning around of the fast in the future to come. And these 2 points will be in the future to come, which is, number one, that Ichud von Yehuda v'Yosef, the union of Yehuda and Yosef, and number two, as Yehuda is the Rike, that Yehuda is the main. Gefindman oich benegeya to the tzoymes. We find it also as it relates to the fast days, how they will be in the future to come. How are these fast days? Asara b'Teves, Shivasa b'Tammuz, and Tisha B'Av, and Shem Gedalia, how they will be in the future. So Vidir is with the Rambam bringt in Soif Hilchos Tinius, the Rambam in the end of the laws of fast brings the promise of the Posik, that the Posik says about the future as the Moisa Mashiach when the Tzoymes Nishapir Ver, that in the days of Mashiach, these fast days that we fast in these 4 days, they will be turned around. And it says, Lebeis Yehuda, for the house of Yehuda. So specifically mentions for the house of Yehuda, L'sosin u'l'simcha, for joy, for happiness, u'lemoyadim tovim, there will be good times. Basically, that instead of fast days, there will be yomim tovim, there will be good days. V'ha'emes v'ha'sholem ahavu. And the truth and peace they will love, which means referencing, as we'll see in a minute, that the truth and peace they loved, which is the peace and the truth between the union, that also the Beis Yosef will also be part, it will be turned around, there'll be the Sosan L'Simcha, and that will include not only the Beis Yehuda, but it will include also the Beis Yosef, because Hamas v'Hasholem Ahavu, there is the truth and peace they love. And so what do we see here? That notwithstanding that everybody is included, but still the Pasuk says Beis Yehuda, Hagam Sevet Zayin, v'Hamas v'Hasholem Ahavu, it'll be the truth and peace that they loved. An inyan funis achdus. This will be a level a concept of unity, Aval became wird ausgeteilt Davke Beis Yehuda. Still, we single out and we say Beis Yehuda specifically, Ben LeBeis Yehuda, Kedlokamon Sivdal V'Sifyud Beis, as the Rebbe will articulate this concept in Sivdal and Sifyud Beis, but it fits together with the Haftorah, which has both inyonim, that there will be a united union between Yosef and Yehuda, but yet it is Yehuda will be Nasi Aleim. Und that inyan, and this idea was in them Hepech Hatzoimes La'osid Lovi, that when the opposite, when the turnaround of these fasts in the future, when there will be no longer fasted, Tel men ois Beis Yehuda, we single out Beis Yehuda, hot oich ashayches miyuchedes to them Tzoim ha'asiri. The Rebbe will explain later on that this has also a very special connection to this fast of Asor B'Teves, Kedlakaman Sifyu Zayin. So these are the various different parts of the Sikha later on that the Rebbe will explain how having specifically Beis Yehuda, and in the turnaround when the Yom Tov of Asor B'Teves for Beis Yehuda, especially for Beis Yehuda, then the Beis Yosef, as the Rebbe will explain later on, Sifyud Zayin. So basically, these are things that will find a connection between what's in the Haftorah and in the purpose of the fast day, which is the building, the lost in love, the promises that when these fast days will be turned around. So first, the Rebbe is now going to explain specifically the language of the Rambam that I just quoted over here in Hilchos Taanis, and to show the specific language, how the Rambam differs a little bit from the Gemara and also from the Shulchan Aruch. And the language of the Rambam tells us about 3 parts in the change around that will take place in the future when the fast day will no longer be fast days, but they'll turn out to Yom Tov. Gimel. But das Verstehen behagdim. We'll understand this by introducing Habir to explain the explanation in the halacha now in the Rambam, in the above halacha in the Rambam. This is the language of the Rambam. Rambam writes that Kol Hatzoymei Elu, all these fast days, Asidim Libotel Limoisa Mashiach, they are destined to be nullified in the days of Mashiach. Instead of today we fast, there are not going to be any fast days. The Rambam adds to it. He says, Veloy oid, not only is it not going to be a fast day, Eloshehem Asidim Lihiyos Yomim Tovim, but they are destined to be good days. They're going to be holidays. Not only that we're not going to fast anymore in them, but they're going to turn over to in the holidays. We may sosu the simcha and days of joys and happiness. Shenemar, and he quotes the pasuk. The pasuk says, "Ko yomar Hashem tzvokis." So says Hashem tzvokis, that tzoim horivi, the tzoim hachamishi, that the fast that takes place on the 4th month, which is Asor B'Teves, the tzoim hachamishi, and the fast day that takes place. I'm sorry, tzoim horivi. That's the Tammuz, Shivosha B'Tammuz, and the Tzoim HaChamishi, which is the Tisha B'Av, and Tzoim HaShvi, that's Tishrei, that's Tzoim Gedalia. The Tzoim HaAsiri, that's the Asiri for the 10th month, which is the month of Teves, all starting from Nisan. Yeh lebeis Yehuda l'sosim l'simcha u'lemoyadim tovim. They will be for the house of Yehuda, for joy, for happiness on good days. Good times, and the truth and the peace they will love. That's the words in the Rambam in which he concludes the laws of Hilchos Taanis. The mocker from the halacha. What's the source of this halacha? Is in Tosefta Seif Tainis, is in the Tosefta in the end of Tractate Tanis. But dort is the Loshen, over there the language is Oisom Yomim Asidim Liyes Yomim Tovim Liyisrael. Those days will be Yom Tov for the Yidden. He doesn't go through, they're not going to be fast days. And not only that, there'll be Yom Tov. It just says straightforward that these days, the days of the fast days, will be a Yom Tov. And he brings a different pasuk, Shenamar, in the Tosefta. Koyomar Hashem. No, actually, he brings the same pasuk. We'll see soon. There's a different pasuk, but he says Koyomar Hashem. So says Hashem that Soim Harivi. We're going with the pasuk that the Rambam just brought down. So that one verstehen. So we need to understand the Rambam quotes the Tosefta a little bit different. In the Tosefta, it's brought in one thing. It just says that it will be turned Yomim Tovim. It doesn't say that it's not going to be a fast day. It's going to turn to Yomim Tovim. So Aleph Harvos is the Rambam Mechalik dem Inyan in Tzvei Babis. Why does the Rambam split this idea into two cases? First, he says, Aleph Kol Hatzemis Ha'ela Sudim Libatul Chulu, that all these fast days are destined to be nullified. And then he says, Beis, a second thing he says, V'lo yoid, not only will they be nullified, Elo Shehem Asidim Liyis Yomim Tovim Chulu, but they're destined to be days of holidays. He splits into two. And he does not say it in short, as it says in the Tosefta, that Asidim Liyis Yomim Tovim, they are destined, they're going to be Yom Tovim. But does mean just by saying that it'll be Yom Tov, so that automatically means that the Shemes Velum Bottle, and that these fast days will become bottle. You don't have to specify, say, first there'll be bottle, and not only that, there'll be Yom Tov. If you say they're going to be a Yom Tov, automatically you're saying you're not fasting there. And then again, it seems like the Rambam takes out the words of the Tosefta that they're going to be Yomim Tovim LiYisrael, Yomim Tovim for the Yidden. It almost seems like that's a necessary component to say Yomim Tovim LiYisrael, that this will be for all Yidden. The pasuk that's brought down in Tosefta, the way it's language in Tosefta is that it'll be unto Yisrael. Why does the Rambam take out? Farvos is mashmid dem vort. Why does the Rambam take out, miss out the word Asidim Liyis Tovim Yisrael for the Yidden was stated in Tosefta? That says in Tosefta, and the Rebbe explains l'chayra. We should say we need to say the Yisrael, because the pasuk that they're quoting says Beis Yehuda, but we want to say that this is going to be a festival for all Yidden, so we should add the word Yisrael. The Chayre is the Hisofa Muchrachas. It would seem that that's a necessary addition. That Yisrael is something that we have to add to the statement. Bibald as in Posuk Velchaner bring do state lebeis Yehuda lesosin geimer, since the verse that he brings here says for the house of Yehuda lesosin. The reason why the Posuk says lebeis Yehuda, simply because this is a pasuk that talks about the Bayis Sheni, when only the Beis Yehuda, the other Shvatim were exiled and they weren't there. And the Padosh about the pasuk Kipshutei, because literally this pasuk read wegen dem Zman from Bayis Sheni. It talks about the time of the second Beis Hamikdash was demoled is noch asveres hashvatim. At that time, the 10 tribes, they had not returned yet from their exile, so there was only Beis Yehuda there. So the pasuk says Beis Yehuda, but we are talking about the future lost in Lovely when all the tribes will be there. So it should makes sense to add the words as interceptor. There's going to be Yom Tovim Yisrael for all you, not Mendoch Meisiv Zayin. So therefore, it seems that you need to add as Limoisai Mashiach, that in the days of Mashiach, the same as when Yomim Tovim, these fast days will become good days, Yom Tefara Alayid, for all Yid. Koilo the Aseres Hashvatim, that includes the 10 tribes. So why does the Rambam admit that? And number 3, why does the Rambam bring down the end of the Pasuk, Va'emes V'Sholem Mahok? Gimel, was is negayet zum inyan do der siyum hakosav? What is it important to our concept over here? What's going to take place in the days of Mashiach? Why do we need to know the end of the pasuk that truth and peace will be loved by them? And the Rebbe explains in Ois Daled that actually that the Rambam is coming to make clear by bringing down Va'emes V'Sholem Ahevu that it's talking about all Yidden, because Emes V'Sholem Ahevu, because there's going to be peace, that is going to include everybody else. Let's look aside. Dalit, the Yeshleimar, we can say as the Tzvei lets the Kashis, the two of the 3 last questions that then Farented Achas Bechaber are answered one with the other question. If you're asking me, how come the Rambam doesn't say the Yisrael, which seems to a necessity, because that's the fast days, the Yom Tovim are going to be for all Yidden. And the answer is, yeah, that's why he brings down the pasuk Emes V'Sholem Ahavu to indicate that it is for all Yidden. Yesh Leimar. That's what the Rebbe says now, explains it down. As the zwei letzte Kashas werden verantwortet Achas Bechaber. To the 2 last questions are answered one with each other. Kedei zu klor machem. In order to clarify, to make it clear. As the Tzoyim werden sein Yomim Tovim far alle Yidden, that these fast days will be good days for all Yidden. As in Pasuk steht Lebeis Yehuda, although the Pasuk it just says the house of Yehuda. But the Rambam the Rambam also brings the end of the pasuk. From this end of the pasuk, it's clear that the Yom Tovim will be for all Yidden. Truth and peace will be loved. Since in the future to come, it will be peace. Also included, there will be peace between the house of Yehuda and Yosef Canal, Siv Beis, as we said earlier in Siv Beis, when by Yigash, and from the Lachodim, from the Haftorah, Va'emes V'Sholem Ahavu, and there's going to be truth and peace. There's going to be peace. But the Riber, the Simcha from Beis Yehuda, that's why the joy that is going to be a celebration and a happiness and a turnaround for Simcha. It's going to encompass Arumnem and Al Yidden. It's going to encompass all Yidden. The Aseres Ashvatim, also the 10 tribes. So that's why he brings that down. But the Rebbe says, okay, but why doesn't he just specify it and say the Yisrael, like it says in the Tosefta, instead of being Meramis, that it includes all Yidden because of the end of the pasuk. As bleibt aber nicht move on, it's still not understood. It remains not understood. Favos is does the Rambam Meramis? How come the Rambam hints this idea that it quotes everybody? By quoting from the pasuk also the words V'emes V'Sholem Ahavu, so we know it goes on everybody. Also, not only for the Beis Yehuda will there be a days of Yom Tov, as the pasuk says, only Beis Yehuda. So how come the Rambam doesn't say explicitly the Tosefta as the Tosefta as the tag vel zay Yomim Tovim li Yisrael? They will be Yom Tovim for all Yid. Okay, so this is the question: how the Rambam. Why the Rambam brings down this to make it clear. And also the first question that the Rambam goes into more details, more than in the saying that it will be bottle, and then it'll be Yom Tov Loyoid versus the Tosefta, which says it will turn into Yom Tov. And Mela, we know that it's bottle, as the Rebbe asked in the first question before. So, hey, now the Rebbe is going to bring down the way it's in the Tur, how the Tur writes it different than the Rambam. We can further ask, also in the Tur, in the end of the laws of Teves, brings him the Teufel from the Minyan, he also brings down the idea of this concept, Hanal, that it will be changed around to Yom Tov. Not in Tur is the Loshen, but the language that the Tur uses, Ul Osid Lovei HaKodesh Baruch Hu Osid, in the future to come. So Hashem will destine lahavchom l'sosin l'simcha, to turn it into joy and happiness. The ksiv, but he brings a different pasuk. Over here brings the pasuk v'afachti evlom l'sosin. I will turn their mourning to joy. V'nichamtim, I will comfort them. V'simachtim miyigoyim, and I will rejoice them from their yogin, from their sadness, from their mourning. Is the over? So we don't understand here. Pavos bring the Rambam, the posuk from Zechariah. How come the Rambam brings the verse from Zechariah? Was retzich lifi pshutei, which according to the simple meaning, that posuk is talking about Vegnsman from Bayisheni. That talks about the time of the second Beis Hamikdash, when Hashem will rebuild the second Beis Hamikdash, it will be the joy then, but Umiderat Gosh and the Beis Yehuda, and then we on top of that we have the emphasis of Beis Yehuda, because as we said before, there is no Aseres Hashvatim haven't returned yet. Davke Be'ezer, he can bring, and he could have brought the Intur, as the Tur brings down, then Posik V'ahav V'afachti Evlon L'Yisosin, I will turn their mourning into joy, Gomer. V'seret B'pashtus V'egnes Mandelosi, that simply speaks about the time of the future. Why does the Rambam not bring down? So the Rebbe going to say that there's actually a connection between these psukim and the fact that the Rambam splits it into two parts. As die zwei Shinuyim zwischen Rambam und Tur, that these two changes between the Rambam and the Tur, that number one, Aleph, in Rambam seinen dort zwei Babis, in the Rambam there are two cases that first they'll be bottled and then they will be Yom Tovim. Only in Tur Ein Baba, there's only one case that they will change around to a Simcha. And number two, in the Rambam bringt it the Posik Koyomar, Soim Goimer, Soim Goimer, Yir Goimer L'Sos. He brings the Posik that we quoted before, that all these fast days will be L'Sos, which is the time of the second Beis Hamikdash. Und in Tur, the Posik, and then Tur brings the Posik, V'fachti Goimer, Zayne Toli Zebazeket L'Kamon. The Rebbe will explain why they're hinged one on the other one, and that there's actually a difference between the Rambam and the Tur, and that's why, according to the Rambam, there's two stages. According to the Rambam, it's the pasuk of Malchus in Bayesheni, and according to the Tur, it's just one turnaround, and he brings the pasuk of the Osilovi. But das verstehen durch Mevayer sein dem Chiluk, we'll understand it by explaining the difference in Teuchen, in the idea zwischen the zwei over in the Monte Psukim, in between the above mentioned verses. The verse that's brought down in the Rambam and in Tosefta, in which he says, Yiyeh l'sosim, it will be for joy, and the language that is brought down in the Tur, und v'hafachti, that it will be turned around. And Rebbe is going to show that in the turnaround, their lives, there's actually 3 steps. And in the Pasuk V'Hafachti, that's sort of the highest of the 3 steps. In the Shinui, the Rebbe said, now we'll say there's 3 steps in the change that is going to happen in the future. 1, there's going to be no more fast. 2nd, it's going to become joyful, because automatically, if there's no fast, then now it's not, that brings joy. So that's the 2nd step. A 3rd step is that not only is it no longer joy because there is no fast, but in and of itself, there is an essence, there's an element of joy in the Yom Tov itself. In the Shinui was in the Tzoymes La'osi Love, in the change that will be accomplished in the fast in the future to come, there are 3 aspects. Aleph, number 1, the Tzoymes Velun Botleven, that these Tzoymes will be nullified. Thus haste. What does it mean? It's a time when there's peace. We only fast when there's no peace. But when you reach a level of peace, then you don't have to fast. So since it's going to turn into a time when there's going to be peace in the world, so the obligation to fast is going to be nullified. As the ruling is, as yes sholem is ein mesanim. If there is peace, then we don't fast. So there's one just to remove the fast. It's enough that there's peace in the world, then we don't fast. Number 2, base. Not only will they not in the future be days of fasting because they're sholem, but there'll also be Yom Tov, good days and days of joy. Now, why? How come they're Yom Tov and days of joy? That fact alone, that you're no longer fasting in those days, that brings joy. We can say, as does Gufa, that the fact itself was negate that is from the matzav hamitzayer, that you're leaving the situation which causes pain. Gezeres hamalchus, where there is decrees of the government, when ain't shalom, there's no peace. So going out from that kind of situation, in a matzav yes shalom, and you're standing in a situation where there is peace, that brings out simcha. So it's associated, really, the Rebbe says, we can say it's associated to the fact that we're not anymore in the negative situation, that itself brings out that this day becomes a joyful day. Number 3, it's not just that the day becomes a joyful day, but the fast alone becomes something that is a joy, a positive. Nit Gimel. Nit blois velum di yimei hatzeimus. Not only will these days that we fasted in in the time of the future, they will be good days. The days will turn around, but more than that. That inyan hatzoim gufa, the fast itself, not the day in which we fast, but fasting. But this happened when the fasting will be changed around. Fasting will be something which is a happiness and joyful. Which means you'll be able to see in it the positive within the fasting itself. As the Rebbe brings down, similar to as it's written, I will thank you, Hashem, because you have rebuked me. So the rebuke, at that time, you will recognize that the fasting, the rebuke, is a thank you to the Eibishter. You see the positive in the fast. As la'osid lovi v'zayin, that in the future to come, why will I thank Hashem? Their far was enough to be, that's why, because you rebuked me. And that's, you're going to thank Hashem. So these are 3 aspects in the what's going to happen to the day. Number one, you're not going to fast. Number two, the day is going to become a Yom Tov. Number three, the fast itself is going to be appreciated as a positive because we'll thank Hashem, because we will sense the value in that, not as a punishment, but what it brings us to the higher level. And the Rebbe is going to say fasting is similar. A purpose of fasting is to bring us to tshuva. Just like in the future, we're talking about the three levels, what happens to the fast day. Similarly, we have, when it brings a person to tshuva, in tshuva we have the three aspects. We have tshuva, forgiving the sin, that's like not fasting. We have teshuva, that the person adds to more mitzvahs because when he does teshuva, that's like coming a Yom Tov. And then you have the aspect of teshuva in which the sin itself becomes a mitzvah. That's the highest level. That's like Hashem after we turn the time around. Let's look inside. Zion. Tainis is medarki teshuva. Tainis is part of the path of teshuva. Gefindt man euch in teshuva ma'ava, also the teshuva that is done out of love. A dugma from the drei inyanim, we find a example of these three inyanim hanal that I mentioned before. Aleph. Durch teshuva ma'ava, when a person does teshuva out of love, so then we say there's a difference. Meira, it's like healing from here and on. Me'ava is ver nekar avoyna mitchila. The sin is uprooted from the beginning, so there is no sin at all. The avoyna is ver mbotl. The sins are negated; they're no longer there, no more. That's like the fast. We're saying the fast; they're no longer a fast; they're bottom. Number two, there was two tshuva ma'ava. A person who does tshuva out of love is moisiv v'maisiv hatoivim. He adds in his good deeds yeser bichdei hatzorich legabe oiseh ovid. He does more than necessary for that sin. So, in other words, after you do teshuva out of love, you do more good deeds, even more than necessary. That's the addition. Durch them, through the fact that you're doing more mitzvahs, that way, not only are the sins nullified, but we get an addition. For maisim tovim legabe oiseh oven, we have additional good deeds relative to that sin. You're doing more. That sin didn't require all these extra maisim tovim, so that is similar to that. It becomes a yom tov. But number three, gimel. Through the tshuva of Ava, we say the sins turn into merits. That means levatzo was as kommen zu durch dem andere meisim toim u'zchuyos. Besides the fact that through that you add additional good deeds and merits, werden euch dis doines gufen is hapech l'zchuyos. Also, these sins themselves, they turn into merits. The sins itself turn into merits. So you have not only that the sin becomes a merit. The tzoim, as we learned before, becomes a turnaround, becomes a positive, just like the sin becomes a zchus. Yesh leimar, as kshem v'der klolus inyan hageula, is opening, just like generally the idea of redemption depends, is opening, depends in Soif Yisrael, last Tshuva, it all depends because of the end. The Yidden will do Teshuva, and that's how the Geula was going to come, Kipsaka Rambam, as the Rambam learns. Azoy is as oir benegeya dem bittel hatzoymes de la'osid in the draye fanim hanal. That same thing is just like Tshuva brings Geula, so the taking away, the negating the idea of the Tzoymes in the future, in the three levels of the Tzoymes Bittel, and becoming a Yontev and turning the Tzoym itself around into a positive, as dos wird aufgetan, so that, how do we accomplish these bittles in the level of the fast day? Wird aufgetan durch der Shleimus HaTshuva von Eden, that is accomplished through the full, complete tshuva of a Yid. Tshuva ma'ave in the drei yonim shuvah, in the three matters that is hinges on that. So we need to do teshuva to the extent that in Ava, teshuva Ava, to reach all these three levels, to uproot the sin, to add meisim tovim, and to turn the zechuyas, the averis, the zdonis naslik is turn to zechuyas. And we need to know this. And the Rebbe will explain now, why would the Rambam have to tell us b'chlal, what is the halacha, what's going to happen in the future? Since we're saying that we have to know how to do teshuvah, that's why it's important. We'll see. The Rambam, okay, sometimes the Rambam brings things when Mashiach will come, but why would the Torah, why does the Shulchan Aruch, why do we need this halacha? So the Rebbe explains, because we need to know how to prepare, because through the Shleimus HaTshuva we reach this level. Ches, damit kemen verstehen. With this we can understand that Tmiya Klolis in the Halacha Hanal, a general surprise, wonder that we have in the above halacha from the Rambam. In the Rambam, we also have the same question in Tur v'Shulchan Aruch, in the Tur and the Shulchan Aruch. The Teuchen from Sefer Yad HaChazoke, what is the content? What is the book? What is the Sefer? What's the idea behind the book of the Yad HaChazoke? Is B'Lashain HaRambam in Zayin Hagdome, is as the Rambam writes in his introduction to Sefer Hayad, to the Sefer of the Yad, halachas, that it's meant to give you laws. It's supposed to be a law. So we need to understand in vos bashtet the halacha, what does the halacha consist of, and then what do we need to know? All these fast days are destined to be bottled. Well, how does that interpret into halacha? And the Rambam says like this: in the Rambam, Kemen Far enter in the Rambam, we can answer. Ados is the far that the reason for that was in Sifra Yad HaChazoke, in his Sefer, the Yad HaChazoke, bringt euch dinim was eine negele. Moshe Mashiach, he also brings down laws that pertain, that are connected to the days of Mashiach. Aber das ist nicht kein Tirutz, but that does not answer for was der Inyan wird gebracht euch in Tur v'Shulchan Aruch. That wouldn't answer. Why is this brought down in the Torah of the Shulchan Aruch? Was they bringen nicht die dinim was eine Shaykh zu Moshe Mashiach. They don't bring the laws of Moshe Mashiach. So why would they bring this thing that this fast day will be bottled? What kind of halacha is that? Is there bir bazeh? The explanation in this, their meat is mevuar, because that explains via zois dar zayin atainis. How a tainis needs to be. The tshuva from them tainis, how the repentance, the level of teshuva of the fast day. Okinal as a tainis medarkat tshuva, as we mentioned earlier, a fast day is part. That's the way of tshuva. Dar zayin in an oifen needs to be to such a degree, in such a way, vazol oifton, that it should accomplish bis as the tzoin gufos on the sabever l'sos l'simcha chulu, that the fast itself should be turned around to joy and happiness. Oistas. And the Rebbe is going to explain now that these psukim that are brought down in the Rambam and the pasuk that is brought down in the Tur differ, that the Tur's pasuk, which says that it'll be hafachti evlon is talking about the fast alone will be turned around, as opposed to the posik that the Rambam and the Sefta quote. Test. Das is euch der Chilik in Teuchen zwischen the zwei Psukim. This is also the difference in idea between these two verses. Der posik Tzoim Harevi Goimer Chamishi Goimer Yiyah Goimer, that this fast day, that it'll become l'soson l'simcha l'moyadim, days of joy, happiness, and festivals, goimer, etc. Red wegen the Yemei Hatzoim. That talks about these days, the days of Asara B'Teves, the days of Tisha B'Av, and Shavuos. These days, as diteg, that there will be holidays. That was haste, which means noisef oifun bittel from the Tzoymes, in addition to the negation, done away, that will do away with the fast days. But Tzukum and the Yisrael will also add the advantage as diteg that these days will be Yom B'Teg. That's the posik that the Rambam brings down. Over the posik v'afachti evlom l'soson goimer, I will turn the morning into joy. Ret wegen dem etzem ovel. They talk about the day. It talks the morning itself, the morning ovel, as the inyan ha-ovel, that the concept of morning when the sapach when the sosul simcha be turned to joy and happiness. Why is that such a difference? Because during the period of the Beis Hamikdash, the first porsig, we're not going to reach to that higher level, which the morning itself would be a time of the tzoim itself will turn into sosim v'simcha, the evelyn sosim. But in the time of the second pasuk, where it talks about la'asid, then there will be a change. Hafachti evelyn sosim. And the tamachiluk, and the reason for this difference in these psukim, the posik tzoim goimer yiyah goimer ret wegen dem zman from Vayisheni. That discusses about the time of the second Beis Hamikdash Kenal Siv Gimel, as we said earlier, Siv Gimel. Und wir bald das Vayisheni haben gefällt die dvarim, since in the second Beis Hamikdash they were lacking these 5 items. Hat euch gefällt in der Shleimus von Hepech HaTzoymes, so therefore it was also lacking in the opposite of the fast. They was lacking. Ashe enke in der Posi v'afachti evlom goimer, as opposed to the posik that says v'afachti evlom goimer red wegen la'asid. That talks about the futures to come. Was dann wird sein der tachlis hashleimus euch in Hepech HaTzoymes. Then there will be the totally complete in the opposite of the tzoymes, which the evil itself will be turned around, and that the evil itself will become l'sosa in l'simcha, as the Rebbe will continue to explain. In Ois Yud, the Rebbe explains in Ois Yud that even though we had just mentioned that the posik that brings down that Tzoim Harevi, the Tzoim all the fast days will be Yil Sosim L'Simcha, and it's only the other posik Vavachte Evlom that talks about the Tzoim itself being turned around. But in the Rambam, the Rebbe learns that even though he brings down this pasuk, but we have to say that he actually means also that the tzayim itself will be turned around, because in the hemshech of the lashon of the Rambam, he says v'loi oid, if it's only that there is no yom tov, that there is a yom tov because there is no more fast day, that happens automatically. The Rambam wouldn't say v'loi oid. V'loi oid means a higher degree, a degree that the Yom Tov itself. The Rebbe brings from the Bach that he teaches even in the pasuk where it says Yi Tzvei Chamishi, that it means that the fast alone turns it around. Yud. Apikol Hanal Yeshleimer. Based on all the above, we can say, Choch the Rambam brings the posik, although the Rambam brings the verse, Tzoim Goimer Yiyah Goimer, and that verse L'chayre is talking about the Bayis Sheni, which was lacking, and it did not turn around yet the Tzoim completely to become Sosa V'Simcha, the Tzoim itself. The L'chayre Apia now, based on the above, that the real change in the Osid will come from the other posik. But the Gedam bring in the posik v'afachti koimer. He should have brought the posik v'afachti. Was weist auf a hecheren ilui, which points to a higher elevation with der ilu was is ausgedrückt in posik soim goimer yiyah goimer kinal, which is expressed in the verse that soim should be, as mentioned earlier. He should have brought the other posik, the posik that's brought down in the Torah. So we still have to say meinter over the mit, but what the Rambam means, however, with this, nit nor as the yemei hatzoim is velnun zayin yomim tovim, not just that the days of the fast days will be yomim tovim, nor oichi also means that the tzoim gufo, that the fast itself, but the sapach ben l'sosim l'simcha will be turned to joy and to happiness. The explanation. That inyan fun hasidim liyis yomim tovim, this idea that in the future they will become yomim tovim chulu, kommt in Rambam. It comes in the Rambam also hemshech as a follow-up to Friedrich Fall to the previous case. The Rambam starts off that kol hatzoymes ha'elu hasidim lebatul chulu, that all these fast days are destined to be nullified. And he adds, not only would they be nullified, but rather they're going to be Yom Tov. Most from them is verstandig, so we understand if it's just the Yom Tov because there's no more, then he's not adding anything. As the inyan for Nasidim liyas Yom Tovim, that their future to be Yom Tovim, to Tov Achidush, this is something, a novelty. Of them Friedrich on what he said before for Nasidim Lebotl, that they're destined to be nullified. Uki haloshin, the loy oid elochud language is not only that, but in other words, there's something new here. The river, therefore, kem and need zog. We cannot say as the Rambam made their meat. That what the Rambam means with this, blois dos was the tag yom tov. It just means that these days will become Yom Tovim. That's all what he's trying to say, because that wouldn't be V'loyoy, that's not something new. That is an automatically, on its own, a result from them from the fact that they are destined to be bottled. Is the teva, because that's the nature. When a situation becomes negated, something which caused pain, and therefore Ruftas b'meila simcha and them is man from Friedrich and Tsar. So this brings out joy, and that time that before you had pain. If you have pain on a certain day and then it's negated, automatically that day becomes a day of joy. So that's not v'loyoy, that's not something new. Muzman zogn. So therefore we need to say, as mit neuftu from v'loyoid elochulu, that when he says not only that, but is kavanosy, what he means as oir der inyan hatzoim gufa, that also this fast itself, that nishapich werden lesosin, is going to be turned to joy. Und if then bringt the Reihe from the posik, he brings the proof from this posik, as the etzem inyan from tzoim goimer yir lesosin lesimcha, that this tzoim itself is going to be for sosim v'simcha, not the mehat tzoim, but the tzoim itself. We have to say that. And the Rebbe brings another proof that this is so, a raya of them, evidence to this, as the posik tzoim goimer yia lesosim goimer can geteilt werden euch bescheiches zum inyan hatzoim gufa, can also be translated as it relates to the fast itself. We teach that the posik itself tells that. In Bach, you find this in the Beis Chodesh, Zel Chelek. And this is the language the Bach says. The Gemara asks if in Poskanal, Kori Lot Saim, in this Posik, he refers to it as a fast, the Kori Sosit, and he calls it joy. Pirush. So what does it mean? Haloshin Eine Meyushav. The language is not settled here. The mashma hu gufei, because it's mashma that itself. So the tzayim itself source of a simcha. Masha yefsher. This is something which is impossible. Sharei tzayim atzmei sa'ar yogan v'anocha, because the fast itself cannot be joy, because that itself is pain. It's difficulty. It's sighing. So instead of saying tzayim harivi, should have said the month that the month is turned. So you see the way the Bach explains the Gemara, that even this pasuk, the fact that it says tzayim harivi, even though the other pasuk hafachti evon l'sos, but in this pasuk the tzayim harivi is not only about the yom, but it's the tzayim itself. Zogt der Bach as the word tzayim goimer. Nicht chodesh Revi Gomer, if it says tzayim, mean that inyan tzayim atzmei, means it's the tzayim itself. So therefore, that's what the Rambam is bringing a proof that the tzayim itself is going to be turned into a yontif. And the Rebbe explains, based upon in Ois Yud Aleph, based upon the general view that the Rambam has two periods in the time of Mashiach. There is the time in which the world in Yemesa Mashiach will conduct Olam Kimin Hoginayek, and there's not going to be any outstanding, unusual things. And the second period will be when there will be all the various different chidushim in nature. Yudalef, which I'm all gered. Already spoken Baruch wegen Shittas Rambam, the view of the Rambam, in them inyan from Yemesa Mashiach on the subject of the days of Mashiach. As Lishitosei, according to the views of the Rambam, will zayin in them tzvei tkufas kloli, is there will be two general periods. Aleph, number one is the tkufa from Tchilas Yemesa Mashiach, the period from the beginning of Mashiach. Was wegen dem werd gesagt, about that period is said, as ein ben ha'olam hazeh li'mois HaMashiach. That first period says there's no difference between now times, the world now, and the days of Mashiach. Elo shibud malchus bilvad. Only the fact that now we are enslaved by other governments, and Mashiach will be our own destiny. We're not going to be enslaved. That's the only difference. As vet nit bottle min hogish, but it's not going to be negated. And the normal conduct of the world. It would be no novelty, nothing new. But my separation is the creation of Bereshit, but rather the world will conduct itself in its usual way. That's the beginning, the first period in the time of Mashiach. After that comes Ashpeta Diket Tukufa, a later period, and that period will be the resurrection of the dead, which is a total change of Minhag Ha'olam. At that point, even according to the view that Rambam will also agree that at that point it will be negated Minhagi Shel Olam, the normal, usually custom, the way the world runs, and there will be a new in the act of creation. But the Rambam doesn't elaborate. Since these are matters that a person doesn't know how exactly this is going to be, until they actually happen. Because these are things which are hidden, which are closed, we don't know. In order to organize how these matters will happen, and not the particulars, are not the main principle in our religion. The Rebbe bringt nicht the meaning in Sefer Hayat. That's why he doesn't bring these ideas. He doesn't bring it down in the Sefer Hayad, the Sefer Halochas, as the Rambam brings down in Hilchos Malach. Balpizei is moving, was the Rambam is mechalik the Halochit, Sefer Tainis and Tzvei Babas. Now we understand why the Rambam splits the Halocha in the end of laws of Tainis into two cases. Well, the Tzvei Inyonim, these two aspects, in Bittul HaTzoymes L'Moisa Mashiach, in the fast days being negated, taken away in the days of Mashiach, will sein in Tzvei Bazundere Tkufas. This will be in two separate periods of time when this will happen. These two steps, how these fast days will be negated, how they will be done away with. In the Erster Tekufa, in the first period, when there's sholem ba'ilom, when there's going to be peace in the world, then the fast days will cease. And then automatically, then the days of fast will automatically become Yom Tov, because since there's no fast days, they become Yom Tov. Kinal Sifyud. We celebrate the fact that instead of this day being a fast day, now it's no longer a fast day. That breaks it into a Yom Tov. But the second aspect, as the Tzvei is Gufa, that the fast itself was a Tsar, same Atzmei Tsar Yogin Vanochu. The Tsar itself is a matter of Yogin Vanocha, as quoted from the Lashon Habach earlier. That's not going to change. That should be changed to joy and happiness. Is in der Bechina from Mittel Minhag Shalom. That's considered. That's in the category of something which stops the custom of the world. It ceases. There's no longer the minhag of the world. Und darüber wird sich das öfter erst in der zweiten Kufa. That is going to be accomplished in the second period from Yemais Mashiach, in the days of Mashiach, when there will be a change in Minhag Shalom. But we still need to know, while we said that even this pasuk can also mean that showing the fast itself changes, that's what the Rambam brings. But why doesn't the Rambam bring the pasuk of Fachti, which is very clear, and it talks about laws and lobby? Yud Beis. Der Tam was the Rambam bring Davke dem pasuk Tzem Gomer Yil Beis Yud L'Sosim Gomer und nicht dem pasuk of Fachti Gomer. Is Valdo is Negeya than Inyan from Beis Yehuda, because here it's important to us, the house of Yehuda. V'habir. And the explanation. Yehuda, who suffered through all the sufferings, by them, the turnaround is a lot more, one who goes through the sufferings. As opposed to the Aseres HaShvatim, the Yosef, they didn't go through all these suffering, and therefore the joy and the bitlat tzoymes is more specifically by the Beis Yehuda. The ikir koishi hashibud, the main difficulty of enslavement, the gezeres malchus, the decrees of the government hulu from Golus, is by Beis Yehuda. It's mainly by the home of Yehuda, in the house of Yehuda, not by the Aseres HaShvatim, not so much by the 10 tribes. They were exiled beyond the river of Sambatin. In the piyut, as we say in the liturgy, nodadet at achas, v'rabis nodadet tichulu. You have journeyed and exiled once, went over there and goes. But I, rabbis nodadeti, but the Sion, Yerushalayim, they say we have been many times moved. Rabbis nadadati, moved a lot. When we bowed, as the Goydel has simcha from the Tzeimus L'Meis HaMashiach, since the greatness of the joy of the fast for the Meis HaMashiach Nemtzev, it comes from Unizlifi Erech, and it is relative, the Goydel Hatzar, from the Tzeimus Bizman HaGolus, the great pain of the fast in the time of Golus, based on how much tsar, that is how much the greatness of the joy. The river with the Eitzarois bringen the Goidel Hasimcha for the Tzemes Limoisa Mashiach in order to bring out the great joy of the fast days, the days of Mashiach. Bring the Rambam, the Posik. The Rambam brings the Posik, Yir Lebeis Yehuda. That's going to be for the house of Yehuda L'Sosim. Was the mit is mudgash. That way it is emphasized as by Zei v'der Sosim v'Simcha Zayin. By then the happiness and the joy will be in a fil gresser mos in a much greater measure. Hayois sits aside their koishi hashibud. Hayois as their koishi hashibud is bazeh asachar, since the difficulty of the enslavement is much more severe, and therefore their happiness and joy is much greater. So the only thing is, there will be the peace, and the truth and peace will be love. The Avdus between Yehuda and Yosef. There's going to be that unity between Yehuda and Yosef. But the Simcha Yisera from Beis Yehuda, so that this additional joy of the house of Yehuda, it will penetrate, and it will encompass all the Aseres Hashvatim, Yosef, also the 10 tribes of that is Yosef, that they too will be included mitzadva emes v'sholom v'hobu. So that's why the Rambam brings this passage, because the Beis Yehuda are suffered, and that brings out the greater level of simcha. The Rebbe says that Rebbe wants to bring out that Yehuda does not just increase the second level, which means instead of fasting, now it's a joy because they suffered the most, but it also changes around when we say that Beis Yehuda has a connection specifically to the third level, that the fast itself gets turned around. Yud Gimel. Hagam as the Hadgosha Hanal in Beis Yehuda. Although that what we're saying before, why are we talking about Beis Yehuda? Because as the Goydel Hasimcha Nemtzev Davke Mitzav Dem Koish Hashiv, that the great joy comes specifically from the difficulty of the enslavement. Was is given mer ubi iker by Beis Yehuda, was more and mainly by the family of Yehuda. So is Faran euch in dem zweiten Neufen. Is Faran euch in dem zweiten Neufen. So so this also in the second, the joy that comes as a result, the Lil Sivov Asulim dem Bitla Tzemes, that the second of the third ways that the Rebbe explained in Sivov, that just because there is no more fast day, that alone brings with it greater joy. And since Yehuda suffered more, the joy is greater. Because the greater and the more that there is the pain and the sighing and the difficulty from the fast day, outsmed is the simcha when the tzoyim veret batul. Greater is the joy when the fast day ceases, and therefore by Yehuda is a great joy. The Rebbe wants to say, but this should also apply the greater simcha in the third level, in the fast itself that gets turned around. Von deswegen, but yet, the Rambam brings them posik midrat goshen from Beis Yehuda, since the Rambam brings the verse which brings the emphasis of the Beis Yehuda, benegeit zum dritten Neufen, with regards to the third, as the Rebbe said before, because loy oid, this is an additional step, which is the third of those was the tzoymis atzmon, the fact that the fast himself will be turned to sosen and simcha. So we have to say as oich that inyan, also this aspect for mahapich, sein dem Zoim l'sosem chulu, hot ashayches miyuchetes to Beis Yehuda davke, that to change this fast alone has a specific connection to the Beis Yehuda specifically. And that has to do with the avodah of Yehuda and Yosef, which Yehuda refines the mata and Yosef brings milmaila, and that's why there could be a change in the essence in the mata itself. The bir in them up in yonim to explain this according to the inner matter of things.